Hey everyone, I'm Gautam aka The Seeker of Wisdom. I'm a manifestation coach, and in this video, we're going to be talking about inner conversations. Now, before I do so, I'd like to remind you guys I am available for coaching. I offer hourly, monthly, email, and DM coaching. The link will be in the description down below, where you'll be led to an FAQ page. We'll have all the answers you need, and thereafter, you can DM me via Instagram or email me for pricing details. I also have a Facebook group where I upload resources, as well as you can ask me questions anonymously if you wish to do so. I also have a mailing list where I post articles from time to time, as well as my latest offers for coaching as well. Again, all the link will be in the description down below, so be sure to check it out. So, guys, without further ado, let's get to it. So, this is going to be a long video, so like even before I start, like grab your snacks, coffee, tea, whatever, right? Like just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So what prompted this video was the fact that I found myself like really talking about inner conversations a bit too often, especially this week, and be it amongst my friends or family, or with my clients, right? I found myself talking about inner conversations just a bit more than usual. So I thought, you know what, because I've not really addressed it, like about inner conversations, so why not make a video? I'll definitely be making more videos on this topic because there's just so much to cover. But like because I've not really made any video right now, so I thought, why not? Let's just talk about it. And I'm going to be covering like SP, the job, and a lot of other things. So rest assured, because a lot of people are always like, okay, really wanting a lot of SP centric content. So definitely, I got you guys covered there. So yeah, so what are inner conversations? Firstly, right? Essentially, we're talking about mental conversations, your internal dialogues here, right? Like the voice in your head that makes everything objective subjective. So what do I mean by this, right? Let's say you see like a McDonald's M, the big overarching M, right? It means nothing, right? It's just there, right? It's an objective thing, like it's just that, like it means nothing unless we give it a meaning, right? So your mind sees it and it says, oh, I should grab something, I'm hungry, right? It makes it subjective, right? So like same thing with like $100 bill, for example. It's just there, it's nothing, it means nothing, it's just a piece of paper, but we make it mean something, right? Our mind makes it mean something, and the way it does so is through internal conversations, right? So like again with the overarching M, we said like, oh look, I'm hungry right now, right? That's an internal dialogue. When you see $100 bill, for example, or you go, oh my god, $100, that's an internal dialogue right there. So the way I see it is inner conversations makes objective things subjective to us, right? It makes some like things around us, it makes sense of the things that are around us, like like objectively, like it changes objective things to basically be subjective for us, right? It makes sense of our surroundings for us, right? I hope I'm making sense right now, because like our surroundings means nothing, right, without making it something to us, without making it mean something to us, right? And the way it does so, right, in my observation, that's something that I've noticed is through internal dialogues, and that's what mental conversations is all about as far as I'm concerned. And this really applies to everything, like from SP to the things that you want and stuff like that. Really quick, like an SP example is, if your SP doesn't text you, for example, right, it means nothing, right? It's an objective thing, there's nothing, it means nothing, you can just go by your day. But there's an internal dialogue that's within you that says, oh, I wonder what are they doing, are they ignoring me right now? I bet they're having fun, they must be really enjoying themselves, now that I'm not in their lives, yada yada yada. All of those things, those are mental conversations that are happening that makes it mean something to you, right? So that's the way I see it. So if you guys have any other like views on it, let me know down in the comments down below, because I really love to know what your views are on this. So the question really is, okay, so how do I change it, right? How do I make it favorable, right? So the first thing, like is of course you know what your internal conversations are. You figure out what it is first that's currently going on in your mind, and then you connect the dots, like, see, okay, I'm having these kinds of mental conversations, and these are the things that are happening in my 3D right now, and chances are they will correlate, right? Okay, so cool. Now that I know that, how am I going to change it, right? You change it by literally like flipping those statements, right? Like whatever statements that are coming up in your head right now. Let's say you don't like a coworker of yours for whatever reason, right? And you are like, he's such a jerk, or she's like such a jerk to me, or something like that, right? Maybe it's your manager, right? Let's call her Karen, right? Because why not? So we say like, Karen's such a jerk to me, right? She's always like picking on me for no reason and so on, right? Flip it. Literally just tell yourself like, Karen is such a nice person. Karen is such a wonderful person to me, right? Like, and like, start saying that to yourself, and that's, you're saying that to yourself, right? What you should also be doing is also be thinking about the mental conversations that you're having with Karen as well, right? So inner conversations, as the word suggests, it's a conversation, right? And like, what is the current conversation that's happening with Karen right now, right? Probably it's not favorable, right? So you flip it to have a favorable conversation, regardless of how impossible it may seem right now in the 3D. That's the key thing. Like, and a lot of people tend to see this as a block, right? Because they just can't make like help themselves like see like, how can this turn favorable, like how can this like turn favorable from how it is right now, because it's so messed up. And this is something that a lot of clients would tell me, and I say, that's not your issue, that's not your problem, right? The how and the when should never be your concern, right? That should never be your concern. So all you have to do is just simply assume that this is done, and just persist in that assumption. So in this case, we are assuming and persisting in the idea that Karen is a nice person, and we are holding in our conversations based on that premise, right? From that premise. So you basically have an inner conversation with Karen, in the most loving way possible, and you hear her replying to you in the most loving way possible as well. So what happens is, regardless of what you see in the 3D, you sustain this. And what's going to happen is that Karen's going to be the nicest person to you on the planet, I assure you, right? And this is going to seem like the most magical thing, because I can tell you guys for sure, because I have first-hand experience in this. So in my workplace, right, I can't say a lot of things about it, but I was in the army like from 2019, I think, yeah, 2019 to 2021. So yeah, and at one point, right, at one point, I remember there were a lot of people that weren't really like on terms with me, right? They weren't really like nice to me and stuff like that, for a number of reasons. And at that point, I got a little frustrated, right? I wasn't like having the time of my life. Things were really not so favorable. And I remember telling myself, wait a minute, I can actually shift this. And the way I did it was inner conversations. So I started having better inner conversations, right, with the people around me. And regardless of my frustrations, regardless of what I was seeing in the 3D, regardless of how I felt that, like, how unfairly I was treated, regardless of all of that, I started having, like, favorable inner conversations. I also started having, favorable inner conversations, about them with myself. Like, I just said, like, okay, let's look at the good things that they're doing right now. And those are the mental conversations that I entertained, when I'm talking to myself about them. And long story short, what happened was, they changed their behaviors with me. The people who didn't ended up leaving or getting transferred, right, to another place, which was like practically like, the chances of it happening is very slim. But the scenarios aligned in such a way that a lot some guys were actually even kicked out, actually. And I remember thinking like, this can't be a coincidence, right? This can't be a coincidence, right? And it was so magical when it happens. So that's why I'm saying, like, like, maintain that favorable inner conversation, and you guys are going to see the results, right? So that's something that I will encourage you guys to do, because like this is something that's really going to be in your favor for sure. So maintain, like, favorable inner conversations, right? So that's it. Like, how do you apply it for SP, right? Because for SP it really, like, a lot of people tend to think like, okay, if I am like maintaining this inner conversation, like, a struggle that a lot of people tend to have is like, they can't maintain the inner conversation because of how the SP has behaved in the past, or they really seem to think like, okay, how is this going to happen, this doesn't even seem like them, and everything like that. And one thing that I always tell people is, you're not talking to the current version of them, you're talking to the ideal version of them, and treat them separately. So you treat the current one, the 3D version, separately from your imaginal version that you're having an inner conversation with, which is the 4D version. So you see them as two separate entities, and you simply just talk to them, right? Just simply have a conversation with them. It can be anything from, like, say, how your day went, to like, what, you can imagine your ideal scenarios, like, let's say if you're aiming for marriage, for example, if you're manifesting marriage with the SP, you can literally have a conversation from the perspective that your marriage is done, and you're happily married to them, and you can have a conversation with them from that premise right now. And you can hear them say loving things to you. You can reply loving things to them back, and you can like, just dwell in that, just embrace that imaginal scene, and treat it as though it's true, right? And whenever you are feeling low, or whenever you're missing them, for example, you don't check the 3D, you have a mental conversation within, right? That's something that I always tell my clients to do. Do not expect anything in the 3D. If you want something, always go within, right? Like, write this down. If you want something, always go within, especially with SP. Because the thing is, the 3D is always showing you, like, the past, right? Again, like, bringing my motion picture analogy, it's like the 3D is like basically a movie that's running, right? And if you guys are going to wave at the projector, and you guys are going to, like, the projected screen, I should say, you guys are going to wave at that and say like, hey, why aren't the characters responding to me? Well, yeah, it's a movie. It's literally playing a pre-recorded like, video, right? So they aren't going to respond to you, unless, like, if you're going to respond, like, if you're going to talk to the people around you, they are going to respond to you, because that's happening. So you can see the movie theater as your imaginal like, world, your 4D, and you can see the movie as your 3D, so to speak, right? So if you want to change something, you change it in the 4D, and then you will see the result in the 3D, right? So always go within, guys. Always go within, because that's going to help you guys a lot here. So like, always treat your imagination as the reality, and always make the changes within, rather than expecting it in the 3D. So whenever you miss your SP, you talk to them within, you hear them cheer you on, like, whatever you want to hear from them, you hear within. Let's say you wanted to share something with them, maybe like your achievement, your recent achievements. You talk to them within, you have an inner conversation within. If you are currently in contact, for example, right, you keep having an inner conversation within. Like I say, treat them as separate entities, right? Like, hear them say the most ideal things to you, right? Hear them entertain the best case scenarios, right? Even if they are saying like, I don't know if we can be a couple, for example, in the 3D, like, ignore that, right? Like, maintain the most ideal situations, and have a conversation from that premise with your SP, right? And what happens when you're going to be sustaining this version of them, when you're going to be assuming this version of them within you to be true, that has to be pushed out, right? So, maintaining inner conversations from the premise of, your desires being a done deal is really a very powerful, way to go about this. So, a lot of people tend to also ask me this, and I was explaining this to a client as well recently, and that was, okay, if I want a text or a phone call from my SP, which is technically the middle, right? But I'm shooting for, marriage. How do I deal with that? And conversations turns out is one of the perfect ways to go about it. And the way I would go about it is, you guys are, like happily married right now, and you have a conversation from that premise. But like, you guys are talking about the past, the good old days, and you can talk about the present time, and you treat it as the past. So you talk about, your good old days, and you hear your SP say, when I called you back then, I was really missing you, and I was really thinking about you all the time. And so this is like, killing two birds with one stone, essentially what you're doing here. And this is something that I always like to, this is a neat little trick I like to use. And this really helps you to, focus on whatever you guys want, but at the same time, you are focused in the end scenes as well. So I would say this is like a good way to go about it as well. But of course, mix it up with other conversations as well, like, again, like how your day went, like what is your hobby, what are the topics that you want to discuss with them. Like, you won't just be talking about lovey-dovey stuff if you're having inner conversations with a person. Like, if you're having a regular conversation with your SP, for example, you wouldn't always be talking about the romantic stuff all the time, right? You would be talking about your hobbies, your interests, about movie that recently came out, for example. Talk to them within as well, like treat it no differently, right, compared to like a real world conversation, right? Like, treat it just as how you would like just a typical conversation with them, right? And I think, like, coming at it from that perspective, like, really opens you up for a lot of conversations rather than just the, like, romantic stuff. Because a lot of people, like, one of my observations is that when it comes to SP, they tend to restrict themselves just for the romantic stuff, so to speak. And even with your employers, right, like, which I'll get into later as well, is, don't just talk about the promotion or anything else. Like, talk about other things as well, right? And I feel like, that can really make it very natural for you, and it doesn't seem that artificial for you. And it can be based on anything and everything, right? So it really opens the conversations up. So, like, talk about more general stuff with the people that you want to have a good relationship with. And that's, I feel like, is going to really, like, open things up for you. So yeah. So other than that, for SP, like, what I would say is, make it as favorable as much as possible, right? And if you are struggling with favorable inner conversations with SP, what I would say is, apologize, like, hear them apologize to you. Like, if you really can't, like, find, like, really can't get yourself to have a favorable inner conversation, like, especially in the beginning, right? Because your mind is like, oh, you did X, Y, and Z to me, like, how could you do this, and all that kind of stuff. Simply hear them say, okay, I did it, and I'm sorry. Like, I surrender, right? What are you going to do to a person who comes off like that? Like, what are you going to do to a person who apologizes to you, right? A lot of the struggle comes from the fact that they are not acknowledging their mistakes, or they are not acknowledging whatever that you feel they've done to you, right? So there's a lot of hurt and pain behind that. But if you hear them apologizing for that, you eliminate a lot of things, and do this as much as you want to, right? But I would say, like, don't dwell in it too much. Like, think about the good stuff, like, the ideal stuff you like to hear from them. But if you really can't, especially in the beginning, this is something that you can do. Like, this is something that you can hear them say, like, yes, I did all of those things, but I love you, and I want to have a life with you, and I want to, start a, like, a brand new relationship with you, with a clean slate. And when you have that kind of conversation with them, I feel like it's going to, really, like, set the foundation for something absolutely beautiful in the 3D. So keep going. So for employers, right, like, like your boss or managers, as we spoke about, like how do you go about the conversations, right? Like you can always hear them praise you, like you're a valued employee. You can hear them praise you for something that you think you have achieved. You can hear them acknowledge your achievements. Sorry guys, I'm running out of breath right now. You can hear them acknowledge your achievements or the project that you have been working on, or like just anything. And you can hear basically good things about yourself, and you just reply like, thank you, I'm so honored, and I feel so blessed, right? And like hear them praise you, hear them just giving you all that love and recognition you deserve, right? And you just like take it all in, regardless of if you feel like it's quote unquote realistic or not. And if you can sustain that, right, conversations, it's definitely going to show up in your 3D for sure, right? So like that's how I did it in for my situation. And this was, mind you, even before I knew Neville, or even before I knew that those were inner conversations, like those things were labeled as inner conversations. So definitely you can do it, right? And like, okay, so a lot of people will ask me, you can do this for your job, you can do this for your SP, how do you use this, or can you even use this for manifesting like a desire that's maybe not even like like a SP, like a person related manifestation, if you will. It's not even like a friend, or it's not a person, it's more of an object. How do you manifest that with inner conversations? So the way I would do it is to imagine a friend, like let's say your best friend, who like at the back of your mind, you can just visualize their voice, like I mean imagine their voice, and so on, right? You imagine them, you imagine having a conversation with them, and you talk about you getting this object, or you having this object at the moment. So let's say it's a car, right? You can add the how, but I wouldn't recommend you to do so. Rather, I would just focus on experiencing or enjoying the object that you have, and hearing your friend or family say, I'm so happy for you that you are having this right now. You deserve it, right? So with a car, I would go something along the lines of, hey, I just got this car, and your friend going, that's amazing. How does it drive? Like what's the speed? Is it comfortable for you? How are people reacting to it? Like just ask all types of questions, and you explain that to them. And in the process of doing so, what you're going to do is you're going to visualize a lot of those details, even without your realization, that is. And you're going to really like dwell in that, and that's really going to help you guys a lot when it comes to like manifesting something, right? And you can actually even have an inner conversation with the object itself, right? Because a lot of people tend to like especially a car, they tend to label it like as a he or a she, and then they would talk to that object, right? You can do that too, there's nothing wrong in that, right? So you can like just say, I love you, and so on, like and you can like just shower it with love, right? Because a lot of people tend to like name a lot of their favorite objects, right? So you can completely do that. You can have an inner conversation, and you can say like how grateful you are for that object, for making it like your life easier. For example, with a car, it brings you from point A to point B. You can always like thank the object for that. And also like giving gratitude, right? We just spoke about it in one of my recent videos as well, like having gratitude, right, for the object, that as though it already have it. So thanking the object, right? And coming at it from that perspective, those are inner conversations too. Those are mental conversations that you're carrying on to. It could be with the object, it could be with yourself, but it's a conversation nonetheless. It's a mental dialogue nonetheless, right? So the key thing is, regardless of whether who you're doing it with, even if it's with yourself, make sure it's favorable, right? Make sure that it's favorable, right? And disregard the 3D completely when you're having these kinds of conversations, because when you're comparing like the 3D, as you're doing something in the imaginal things, is doing a disservice to yourself, because the 3D is a result of past thoughts, assumptions, and beliefs. And like I would say, like with the like your imaginal scenes, like it will arrive, right? Because this is something that a lot of people ask me is, okay, if I'm assuming and sustaining all of these things, like when will it come, right? Like what is the time that it will come to me? And here's the thing, like it will come, right, when you have assumed it long enough, and when you are constantly sustaining it, and two, when you have like a deep sense of conviction, right? And another thing I would say is like if you are eating something like a healthy food, for example, right, you wouldn't expect those changes to be seen like literally the next day, right? Let's say like if you just started eating healthy, you wouldn't start like seeing all of those like changes immediately, like tomorrow, for example. It's going to take a while, right? Because as you're doing this consistently over a period of time, then you're going to see those gradual changes. And the same thing goes with mental diet as well. So be patient with yourself, right? And when it comes to like talking to yourself as well, like like don't beat yourself up for anything, especially for maybe like not manifesting something, right? Be patient with yourself, talk nicely to yourself, be kind with yourself. And because everyone is you pushed out, those things are going to be pushed out as well. And a lot of people ask me like, okay, why do inner conversations work, right? How is it if I can sustain a inner conversation with my boss or with my colleague or with my friend or with my SP? How does it get reflected on the outside? Like, why does that happen, right? And the short answer is because everyone is you pushed out, right? So everyone is within you. So literally all the dialogues that are happening within you can be heard by everyone. This is why we say thought transmissions are real, right? So when you're focusing on that person, right, they are hearing it too. They are hearing those conversations too. And that conversations, because you're saying it with such convictions, right? Especially like mental arguments, you do it with such conviction that the person might as well be there literally, right? So you are saying it with such a level of conviction to the point where that has to be externalized, and it does so very quickly, because you are saying it with such conviction, you're assuming it to be true. It gets pushed out so quickly. It may even happen within a week, and like your mind goes, you see, I was totally right about this person, my intuition was right about this person, look how they are behaving right now. Well, they are behaving that way because of your mental conversations, right? Nothing happens on the outside without it happening on the inside, guys. Remember that, right? So this is like these are my thoughts on inner conversations. I'll definitely like expand on a lot of other things, but the bottom line is this, right? Figure out what your current inner conversations are, and change it and sustain those inner conversations regardless of what you see in the 3D, and continue it until it shows up in the 3D, right? So with SPs especially, like even if like they are not doing anything, like again, persist in the ideal version of them that's within you, right? It has to show up, right? Trust in your your God self, trust in your ability to manifest it. It has to happen, it has to show up. All you really need to do is to just sustain it consistently over a period of time, right? Regardless of what you see, guys, regardless of what you see, just sustain it, and it has to show up. And like just don't give up, right? If especially like this is what I always tell my clients with SP is, if you guys really love someone, right, tell them in your mind, have that inner conversation, and you will definitely get that opportunity to tell them in your 3D as well, right? Why fight someone in your head when you want to manifest them, right? When love them, right? Think about it in that way, and it's really going to help you guys a lot. So yeah, guys, I hope that makes sense. We've come to this end of this video. I know I jumped from different topics here, but it was still in the inner conversation, so I hope that everything made sense to you guys. If this video resonated with you, be sure to drop a like and a comment down below. Be sure to hit the bell notification icon so that you will know when I upload a new video every single week. Be sure to subscribe, as it goes a long way in supporting the channel. And